This is Mike from the Bedford Guide. I'm here live with your mayor, Jon Mitchell, New Bedford mayor. We're going to talk, first time we've done this live, we're going to ask some questions and go ahead and ask your questions for the mayor if you want to, something that you really want to talk about. So let's talk, Mayor Mitchell, I got the release yesterday about the dog park. A lot of people are excited about that.
Yeah.
So I think the misconception is that this money comes right from the taxpayer and it should be used for other purposes, but how do we get funded for that?
Well, this is a good deal for the city, Mike, because we've got a grant in the ballpark of about $500,000, about $250,000, excuse me, to design and build out this park. And it's good use of the land on Hathaway Boulevard because that area is pretty contaminated. Some of that area is going to become part of Keith Middle School, and so that we can have outdoor athletic facilities for the kids there. But a good portion of it's going to be dedicated to this dog park. So it's being built out through the use of this grant, and we've had lots of public input over, especially the last 6 months. This has been something that's been kicking around the city for a while, and then after I got into office, it sort of fell into my lap, and we went out and got the grant where we started moving this thing along, and here we are. We're very close to making this thing happen. So construction is likely to begin in the next few months, and I think by this time next year for sure we'll have the city's first dog park. Dog parks, as you know, are wildly popular around the United States, and it's about time that we have one here.
I saw it's going to have badge access, little doggy water fountain,
all that stuff. Yeah. The dogs get to work out and get in shape, right?
So let's talk. One of the topics, New Bedford High School and really schools in general. The numbers are showing a turnaround, and it seems to be working. It was a painful start, but it seems to be the graduation just happened, and it seems like we're doing well.
Yeah, things are happening at the high school. I mean, the numbers are showing it. The dropout rate is the lowest it's been in 15 years. If you talk to anybody at the high school, faculty, administration, students, they'll tell you things are completely different now, and that's exactly what we want to hear. We want a high school that has a good climate, that's giving kids an opportunity to learn where they are, to give customized instruction to kids, so whatever their aspirations are. If they want to go off into the work world, or the military, or to college, we want to make sure that they have good opportunities there to learn. The school's starting to get its confidence back, which is exactly what we want to see. The high school, every high school has to work for us. I'm determined to make sure that it does, and the administration and the school system has been hard at work. Bernadette, to make that happen. Bernadette Coelho has been doing a fabulous job at the high school, and her team, it's a very strong team there, and they're not only turning the school around, allowing it to accelerate. We're doing later this week the mayor's list, which is an annual event in which I give out an award to the top 10 academically ranked kids in each class, and the kids this year, as it's been in the past, historically, are going to great colleges. And so I would suggest to parents that they need to don't buy into the scuttlebutt about that you've heard over the last few years about the high school. Take a close look. It's an important decision on where to send your kid to high school. Bedford High School is definitely on the move these days.
So Aaron asked, are the elementary schools having conversations with 4th and 5th graders about negative impact on drugs? And I've seen with the opioid crisis, people say we got to start young.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. So I have embraced the idea of educating not only our high schoolers but also our middle schoolers about the risk of opiate abuse, because it's very important to start to cultivate an awareness that there are perils out there, and you don't even want to start in on that stuff or other drugs for that matter, because it can lead to really bad outcomes, right, that we're all familiar with. So it's a good question. I think what my own take on it is, let's see how it goes in the middle schools where there already is health instruction, and if we think that we need to do it in the elementary schools, if that's the takeaway, then I'm open to it.
So I was at the city council meeting last night, and Public Health Department, Brenda Weiss, was talking about synthetic marijuana. It wasn't an ordinance, it was a regulation, and I thought she had the right approach, which is to target the symptoms instead of the actual ingredients, because the manufacturers get around by changing ingredients. So it looks like there's going to be a public forum soon. So what's your opinion on the synthetic marijuana finally getting it out of the city?
Yeah, I want New Bedford to be a place where if you're in the market for a synthetic marijuana, you're going to strike out. Right? We want to get it out of our city. We've heard a number of stories of people who have, especially young people, who have consumed it and have had health problems, have hallucinated, and it's in many ways far stronger than conventional organic marijuana. So we want to make sure that we deal with this public health risk before it really starts to take root. This stuff is marketed under all kinds of names, all kinds of packaging, and it's frankly marketed to kids, which I think is the most troubling thing. So we want to put in place an ordinance that penalizes any business that sells synthetic marijuana. A lot of businesses, to their credit, have refused to sell it, and I think we want to encourage that. But it also, my budget, the one that I've submitted to the City Council, there is included a funding for more enforcement personnel in the health department. We add another inspector, will be someone who goes around to different businesses to check out what they're selling, so that we can find out who's selling and then deal appropriately with those businesses.
So someone's asking about the panhandler problem. It seems like when the city council tried to do something, ACLU came in and it kind of backfired a little bit. So I don't remember the panhandlers being a problem 2 years ago, like they are today. It seems like they're coming from out of the area into the city. Have we kind of given up on doing anything with them?
We haven't given up. I think it's going to be it's a little less straightforward than it had been, and it had been the case that we were dealing with it by arresting people for being in the median, and it's pretty clear that now that we can't do that. There have been some federal court cases that have said not only you can't do it, but the cities that try to do it are going to get sued, and they're going to lose, and they're going to pay steep legal fees, and that's what caught our eye. The city of Lowell and the city of Worcester both lost lawsuits in the last couple of years and had to pay out in both cases, the respective cases, $700,000+ and $1.1 million. We don't have that kind of money lying around to take those risks. So and this is, and I go off to mayors' conferences around the country, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, in which I'm active, and they're all talking about it. There are these court cases out there that give panhandling wider protection. So what we have to do is to make sure that we're doing outreach because to these folks, a lot of them are there not because they're homeless, but because they have drug problems, and they're using that opportunity to get money to fuel their own drug use. But we also, and the majority are not homeless. People need to understand that. We're going to continue to enforce the traffic laws as well, because it's not safe for them. It's not safe for motorists or people stepping into traffic and reaching for money. I mean, that's something that we have to discourage and get our arms around. And so that's going to take time, but we're doing it. The other thing is, I tell everybody is, it doesn't do anybody any good if you're handing money out the window of your car to someone who's panhandling. It's not good for them because it encourages that behavior. And again, they're only going to use it, most of them are only going to use it to buy drugs or alcohol. It causes a public safety risk. If for people who want to express their charitable sentiments, to give, as we all want people to be generous and giving to others in need, there are other ways to do it. Give to Catholic Social Services, give to PACA, give to any number one of these organizations in our city that that takes care of folks like these. Better to do that than to encourage this kind of behavior and make the problem all the worse.
Yeah. So let's talk about economics. So New Bedford, Whalen City, textiles, fishing. Fishing seems to be squeezed by the federal government right now. They're charging like $700 for a trip for a NOAA person.
Ground fish, yeah.
What do you see as the future of the economy of New Bedford? Is it one industry? Is it multiple?
No, we embrace diversification, and our economic development plans have really emphasized the need to diversify, the need to build on our assets, which are things like the port and the downtown and our highway infrastructure. Those are things that are really going to pay off for us in the long run, especially the port. And that's why I've spent so much time as mayor dealing with port-related issues to try to develop our cargo business on the port, and that's definitely growing very fast. To develop recreational boating, to work on offshore wind, which holds an awful lot of promise. And then the fishing industry to shore it up. And although the fishing industry on the East Coast is contracting, New Bedford's market share is actually growing as a number of ports up and down the East Coast are drying up because they don't have the landing volume to support the supporting industries. You know, the welders, the ice houses, and everybody else that the fuel companies that support commercial fishing activity. So we're seeing a bigger market share in New Bedford. But what I'm trying to do is to make sure that we make the most of our port assets. We plan well, we invest in infrastructure, we market our city well, and it's working. I mean, our unemployment rate in April is the lowest it's been in that month in 15 years. The city is growing, and what's really key right now is that, you know, as it's growing, we don't rest on our laurels. We have to continue to invest in the city, invest in infrastructure, invest in the school system, invest in the public spaces in our city to make our city's quality of life more enticing, so that in the long run, as our economy grows and our economy dips, as it inevitably will at some point, we start to even out things. I mean, over time, New Bedford's been like this. It's been, you know, it usually leads the rest of the country into recessions and lags behind the rest of the country in recoveries. We want to smooth things out so it's more stable. You do that by diversifying your economic base, and what we've been doing is working.
What about marijuana as an industry? James asked, you know, so we're probably leading towards a vote in November, or probably yes.
Yeah.
People have pushed for medical marijuana in the city of New Bedford. Yeah. What's your opinion on that?
So we've talked about this for the last few years. You know, I've taken a view in which you sort of separate cultivation centers from dispensaries. With cultivation centers, which are basically the factories for medical marijuana, I want to see those in industrial areas of the city so that they don't have an effect on neighborhoods. We've had occasion to talk to a few marijuana factories. They call them grow centers. We've talked to a few of them, and so we're definitely open to doing something like that. The business park is probably one of the better places for that. There are a handful of other places in the city as well that are afield from neighborhoods. So we're fine with that, so long as security's there, so long as they're hiring local folks, so long as they're contracting with local companies, and so long as they enter into a host community agreement with the city that pays the city something for the risks, if any, to the extent there are risks associated with those businesses, that the city gets something from it. So that's cultivation centers. With dispensaries, that's a different matter. I mean, we're in a time now where we're really dealing with a very difficult addiction problem in our city associated with opiates. I just find to me, the idea of putting a dispensary in a closely packed, a dense urban neighborhood near schools and churches and playgrounds and places where kids go amid a very troubling opiate crisis is probably not a good idea, and so we haven't pursued that. But as far as factories go, if they're in the right place in the city, that's something we're open to.
So Mitch talks about youth programs. I know you have a summer work program for the youth. There's a correlation to high unemployment for youth and crime.
Right.
What's going on this summer?
Yeah, so those programs are happening this summer. We also have our summer camp programs as well. You know, the funding for that has dropped over the years, and also corporate support has dropped for those programs over the years. So I think, you know, the question is an apt one. We do see kids getting themselves in trouble. You know, idle hands in the devil's workshop when it comes to summer programs. That's probably the main reason why we spend money in that area. So you know, we're going to continue with our summer programs. We think that we would certainly love to grow them more, but we do have budgetary constraints.
So one of my favorite things that have happened in New Bedford the last few years is the jazz in the Custom House Square. Yep. And the concerts on the pier. Yep. So we continuing that this year?
We are. Yeah, that was something we started. We were right here in my office a few years ago. And we thought, well, why don't we do something on Friday nights down by the pier to draw people down to the waterfront? And we figured we'd do it right by the ferry terminal. There'd be people at the terminal who were heading to Martha's Vineyard who might be interested in just listening while they waited. And so we did it. The first night we had, I can't remember who the act was, but it was basically a guy with a guitar and then a beer hut. Now, the beer obviously helps, but we had people out there. I don't know if you were there that night, but we had the first night there were about 100 people there. We thought, wow, that's not bad. I figured like 50 people or so. And then the next week came and there were 300 people, and the next one came and there were 500, and then, so in the 3 years since then, it's been, we've averaged about 700 a night. When Samantha Johnson played last year, we think we had well over 1,000 people. So we're gonna keep that up, and as we, a big part of our effort in the city, in the waterfront, is to connect it back up to the downtown. We've done a lot of planning in the last couple of years for that purpose. That's why we see all the beautification work along Route 18. That's why we've encouraged the development of businesses like the Black Whale and the ice cream shop right next to it. We'd like to have more of that. We've got to convince the state that it's a good idea to use some of that space on the state pier for retail and other purposes, and I think that it can be done without compromising our maritime businesses. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to knit the downtown and the waterfront together. We have a great downtown, but it's landlocked, and what we're trying to do is bring it right down to the water, bring the waterfront to the downtown, so that we can, really leverage both.
So I'll close with one last thing: focus on crime. So obviously the stats don't lie. 10% reduction since last year, but you admitted that there's pockets that really haven't changed. So we got a new police chief, Captain Cordero. What do you think the priorities are to really reduce those high crime areas?
Yeah, so we've made a lot of progress for sure, and citywide, and that's through the hard work of our police department. That's in part because of the hard work of the housing task force getting out there and enforcing the city code, which shouldn't be understated, just because a lot of times when we get landlords to start to deal with their properties and deal with their tenants, we see drops in crime in cities across the United States experience that. But you're right, there are places where we need to focus. I mean, the one that comes to mind is the near North End, where we have, up along the North Front Street corridor, we still have some work to be done there. And, so we're going to continue to focus on the quality of life stuff. So if we're getting rid of graffiti, which we've been very successful in over the last few years, getting rid of the garbage, increasing the visible police presence in that area, but also just you doing a better job with data as well. I think that's one of the things that we want to see in the long run. The most successful police departments in the United States are sophisticated about data, to the point where you can almost predict where a crime is going to occur at what time, because just in any given week, that during the time of day, the crime is highest around 11 o'clock at night, and during the course of the week, it's usually Friday night and Saturday night. So you can actually see where the times and places where you need to put the most police. We don't need to beef up our police presence on Hawthorne Street, but we do probably need more boots on the ground in places like Tallman Street, where it stands to reason. So Chief Cordero knows what he's doing. He understands these problems. There's a lot of work to be done in that part of the city. The vast majority of the city is very, very safe, and people need to keep that in mind. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that when you see, the news clip of burglary, or there's a shooting or something. But understand that the trend lines are down, and we're going to continue to push them down.
Captain Cordero addressed it. I battle with people on social media all the time. There's no snitching policy that happens. That people think they see a crime, that they're actually snitching by calling the police. Yeah. And if you don't, eventually it's your car that gets broken into. So I think it's an effective. Captain Cordero is very liked out there. Hopefully his message gets out there. What would you say about that?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. What he recognizes is that the police are effective when there are bonds of trust between the police department and neighborhoods. When someone can say, I know that police officer, and he's going to take care of it. I know that that's somebody who's going to do his job. That's when you get good results. That's when people come forward with information. That's when if the police are putting cases together and putting two and two together, that's when they can actually make arrests. And as I said, I think there's a data component to it, knowing where crime's likely to occur, and then there's also a very human element of building trust in the community, especially with younger people. And I think Joe is very adept at both.
So that's it. Thanks for your time, Mayor Mitchell. If you still have questions, post them in there. The office will take a look at them and try to address some of your questions in the future. And we'll try to do this again. So thanks again.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, Mike.